What's going on, guys? It's Cimoooooooo. So today I'm bringing to you an updated meta analysis for the April 2019 format. Now, we should be getting a ban list either this week or next week, hopefully this week, just so we can see exactly what the list will look like for the WCQ format. But I wanted to bring you this for a couple reasons. First off, I want to keep you guys updated on how the current meta decks are shifting and what trends the top decks are going with. But second off, this was the first weekend that the Endymion structure deck was legal for any sort of event. So I want to show you guys what players have been experimenting with and what trends we might see and expect for the Endymion deck moving forward into the format. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get right into it. So kicking things off, I'm going to start with the ProPlay Games Tour event in Dallas, Fort Worth, Texas. And the thing is, when it came to this event, it was 175 players, which does sound a little bit low. That might be, somewhat of a regional type numbered level, but at the same time, the players in attendance, these are some of the best players we have in the game. We have YCS champions, UDS champions, players who have topped multiple YCSs or UDSs at that. So the field of players was stacked. So even though the player count was low, the player skill level was definitely higher than average. And with a prize pool of about $3,200 up for grabs, it's really no surprise that these players did come out in mass just to go ahead and have a shot at winning that prize money. So when it came down to it, here was the top 16 breakdown for the ProPlay Games Tour event in Fort Worth, Texas. Now, I was able to attend this event and I had a blast doing live stream commentary for you guys. And if you guys really enjoyed this stream, be sure to let me know some feedback on what you liked, what you didn't like, or what you want to see improved on in the future, because we may be doing this again, and I really hope that I have the opportunity to do so. So, getting back into the pie chart here, what may look a little bit strange is that Salamangreat actually took up a majority of top cut representation. I believe 7 of the top 16 decks were Salamangreat, and that's pretty crazy. It's not like too much of a surprise, but we've seen that Sky Striker has pretty much shown that it has been the best deck for kind of the past year now, and Sky Striker has really just kind of had the most overwhelming dominance when it comes to these top cut breakdowns. But for this event in particular, Salamangreat looked like the choice. Now, the thing is, when it comes to Salamangreat, there are some different takes on Salamangreat that we're starting to see because the format is starting to become more of a control-based format. That doesn't mean we still don't have the crazy combo decks like Danger, Thunder Dragon, Orcus, things like that, but because of the fact that a majority of players are opting to go for Salamangreat or Sky Striker, or also maybe even these other slower control decks in the stun and maybe tier 2-ish category, that's why we're starting to see some new inclusions here. So here's the first place deck list for Cameron Neal. Again, UDS champion, just absolutely tearing it up, and this is what he decided to go with. Now, when you look at this deck list in particular, there are a couple things to mention. First off is the fact that we did have 3 copies of Solemn Strike in the main deck, and the reason why this is a big deal is because, as John and I talked about in the live stream, Solemn Strike is a card that, in theory, is very good. It's actually probably one of the most powerful counter traps in the entire game, but depending on the speed of the format, it kind of just depends on if you're able to incorporate this card into your main deck. And because, like we said, we're slowly going to a little bit more of a control format with a lot more players opting to play Sky Striker and Salamangreat and things like that, Solemn Strike actually becomes very effective. I mean, having a spell speed 3 negation of any of your opponent's monsters effects, including hand traps, is pretty damn good. Not to mention, up against your Sky Striker matchup, Solemn Strike can ultimately just end their turn, can soft stuff like Ray in the Graveyard, it can just really be a detriment to the Sky Striker strategy. So much so that we also saw players playing Solemn Strike in their Sky Striker builds as well. And that's something that kind of came when the deck first came out, but then people kind of started to cater away from that. But now we're seeing the card be reincorporated. Does that mean it's going to trend forward? We'll just have to see, but it is where the current meta stands on this. Now, another important note here is the 3 copies of Shared Ride. Now, the thing is with Shared Ride, again, it's one of those cards that people have been kind of back and forth on. We've seen it in the side deck a lot, but Cameron Neal opted to main deck the full 3 copies because, again, if you look at the fact that we have a field of Sky Striker and Salamangreat primarily, Shared Ride is really good against both of those decks, and both of those decks are most likely not going to kill you on the following turn. Salamangreat more so than Sky Striker, but again, these decks can sometimes have issues dealing out lots of damage. So with Shared Ride, you're putting your opponent in that max C sort of dynamic where they don't want to give you a ton of cards because in a control matchup, resources are everything, and the more resources your opponent has, the more difficult it's going to be to kill them on the following following turn, so having Shared Ride in the main deck was also a trend we saw at the Pro Play Games Tour event as well. So congrats to Cameron Neal, he definitely earned it. Going undefeated 12-0 for the entire tournament was really awesome to see. Now we have Salamangreat up there, of course, but that does not mean we still don't have Sky Striker. Sky Striker took up 3 of the top 16 slots, and again, the Sky Striker builds were pretty much what you'd come to expect, fairly standard. Like I said, there were some incorporating copies of Solemn Strike. It did, however, though, win the 1K event that took place on Sunday, so again, just because Sky Striker didn't take the main event doesn't mean it wasn't in attendance, and didn't mean it went home empty-handed, because $400 in that 1K event is still a pretty good prize for first place, going 6-0. So I'll have the list for that Sky Striker player here in case you guys are interested. Like I said, the list is fairly standard. It's nothing like too crazy here, but I thought I'd go ahead and show that list to you guys anyway. Now we're gonna go ahead and get to what you guys really want to see, and that is the Endymion list. So 3 Endymion Pendulum lists did end up making the top 16, and there were also more in attendance, and beyond that, I heard there was also some other ones that were playing at other regionals, so the deck is definitely being experimented with. So I'm gonna go ahead and show you guys all 3 of the different deck profiles. The first one is kind of a more standard version of the list, not really playing anything too spicy here. A lot of the players aren't exactly playing a pure Endymion build, they're actually just playing 3 copies of Servant along with a copy or 2 of Endymion himself, as well as the 3 copies of Spell Power Mastery. That way they can go ahead and tutor for their copies of things like Servant and get to their master. That way they can pretty much have a built-in negation with that on the field, in addition to all the rest of the plays that the Pendulum Magician strategy can do. The second list is a little bit spicier because we do see a Zephyra tech in here. Now, this isn't like a Zephyra build, we just see stuff like Zephyr New and Zephyr Divine Strike being played here, but the thing is, just having those cards in here allows you to have just a little bit more layer of negation, because you can just send the Zephyr New with your Heavy Metal Foes Electromite, Pendulum Summon it out, search your Zephyr Divine Strike, and so in addition to everything else you can have on your board with Pendulum Magician, you can have another protection in Zephyr Divine Strike on top of that. So just for incorporating 2 cards into the deck doesn't seem too bad, but there are some players trying to experiment with more Zephyr-oriented builds rather than just teching a couple of cards. Now, the most interesting version was played by Alex Bergeron, who I believe ended up getting 4th place, or the 3rd or 4th place slot at the event. He did make the top 4, and that was incorporating the Amorphages into his build as well. Now, this is something that I really love to see, because not only was he playing Goliath in the deck, but you also have a copy of Lechery. Lechery denying your opponent to activate spell cards. So can you imagine going up against a Pendulum Magician player, in addition to every other thing they can summon on their board, and they have the ability to stop you from using your extra deck and stop you from activating spell cards? Yeah, when you're going up against something like Sky Striker or Salamangreat, you can bet that that is going to be a very rough time for them. So I really like this build, and it's really no surprise that he did go as far as he did, and we got to showcase his deck on live stream a couple of times, and I'm really happy he managed to make the top 4. We were rooting for him to take the whole thing, but unfortunately it just didn't seem to go that way. But still, congratulations to him. He still did manage to get paid out well. Now, beyond that though, we still had a couple of other decks on this pie chart here. The first off was Danger Thunder Dragon. Danger Thunder Dragon was still in attendance, still plenty of people playing it. It just did not manage to make the top 16, although it came very close to winning the 1K as well. So Danger Thunder Dragon, still definitely one of the strongest decks and something you have to look out for. We had a Danger Zombie Orcus deck, which is something that a lot of the pro players experimented with a while ago, back during the UDS in March, and it's a crazy deck. It's pretty much just a traditional Orcus deck, but incorporating the zombie engine gives it a very different kind of dynamic to it, because you can use stuff like Mizuki to resurrect anything in your graveyard in Zombie World, alters the types of your opponent's monsters, which helps disrupt stuff like Salamangreat. It's a really cool deck, and I have the deck list here for you guys just so you can take a look and see how that played out. And then in addition to that, there was also one Prank Kids that made the top 16 as well. Prank Kids is one of those rogue decks that, you know, you really can't count out. It's got a pretty good Sky Striker matchup, and ultimately he ended up falling off in the top 16, but we did get to showcase that on the live stream as well. Pretty cool to see. You're always going to see one of these random decks like Draco or Prank Kids make the top 16 of these events, so it's really no surprise that Prank Kids did in fact make it. Now, wrapping up this video, I do want to talk about YCS Quito in Ecuador. Yes, so this event was, I believe, 450 players in that ballpark, did cut to a top 16. Unfortunately, I do not have any data on the top 16 other than what I was able to find just doing some quick searching, and I did find out that Sky Striker did in fact take first place again, so that's another win under Sky Striker's belt. Danger Thunder Dragon coming in second. Now, again, Danger Thunder Dragon, just because it's getting second all the time and never manages to take first, doesn't mean you can't count that deck out. The amount of power that that deck exerts is just absolutely immeasurable, and you have to be prepared for it going into any main tier event. The biggest spice, I think, out of Quito, though, was the fact that there was a Cyber Dragon Orcus deck that managed to take fourth place. And this deck is really, really cool because it has combos that you can incorporate stuff like Cyber Dragon Infinity to protect you before you go into the full Orcus combo, and then as a thought, your opponent. Not to mention, because you're playing the Cyber Dragons, going up against your Sky Striker magic, you can contact fuse away any of their Sky Striker Link monsters, so that way Ray won't summon itself, but more importantly, it plays around Eagle Boosters. So I thought that was really cool to see. Like I said, I'll go ahead and see if I can get that deck list up for you guys, but if not, I'll sure have a link down in the description. So guys, that's gonna go ahead and do it for this meta analysis. I wanted to get this out to you guys just before we get the ban list so we can see how things start to shift when we do get the ban list and see how we're going to be trending towards the WCQ format. Let me know down in the comments what you guys think. I'd really love to hear your thoughts. So guys, thank you so much for watching the video. Be sure to like the video as always, subscribe to the channel for more amazing Yu-Gi-Oh content, and if you found this video helpful, consider supporting me on Patreon or becoming a YouTube channel member, because just by showing your support in any way that you can, you're investing in my ability to continue bringing you amazing Yu-Gi-Oh content. So thanks so much again, and we'll see you next time.